It was a dreary November evening when the journalist, Clara, first approached the desolate cemetery on the edge of town. The air was thick with fog, muffling the world beyond the wrought iron gates that creaked ominously as she pushed them open. Clara had heard the whispers, rumors about the old guard, Elias, who had watched over the graves for decades but had vanished 2 nights ago without a trace. She was determined to uncover the truth. The cemetery stretched endlessly before her, its ancient gravestones tilting at odd angles, choked with ivy and moss. The only sound was the crunch of dead leaves beneath her boots and the faint rustle of the wind through the skeletal branches overhead. As she moved deeper into the grounds, her flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows across the tombstones. Near the center of the cemetery, Clara found Elias's small, weather-beaten shack. The door hung ajar, swaying slightly on its hinges. Inside, the air was stale, filled with the scent of damp wood and something faintly metallic. The single room was cluttered with tools, lanterns, and a rickety cot. On the desk by the window lay a thick leather-bound diary, its cover worn and marked with scratches. Curiosity overtook caution as Clara picked up the diary. The first few entries were mundane, recounting Elias's daily routines and musings about the weather. But as she flipped further, the tone shifted. The entries became erratic, filled with shaky handwriting and cryptic phrases. November 3rd, one entry read, "They whisper to me at night. Voices from the earth. They demand justice, revenge. I try to ignore them, but their cries grow louder. I see their faces in the dark now." Clara's skin prickled. She turned the page, her fingers trembling. Another entry, dated 2 nights before his disappearance, sent a chill down her spine. November 9th. They rise. I saw them with my own eyes. Shadowy figures clawing their way from the graves. They are not at peace. I begged them to stop, but they know no mercy. They will come for me. They will come for anyone who dares to stay. A sudden noise outside the shack made Clara's heart leap. She froze, straining to hear. It sounded like shuffling footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling the shack. Gathering her courage, she peeked out the window. The fog had thickened, but she could just make out a figure moving among the graves. It wasn't walking, it was lurching, its movements jerky and unnatural. Clara's breath caught as the figure turned toward her. Hollow eyes glowed faintly in the mist, and its face, if it could be called that, was a grotesque mask of decay. She stumbled back, knocking over a lantern. The noise seemed to draw the creature closer. She could hear the crunch of gravel as it approached the shack. Panicked, Clara grabbed the diary and fled. She darted between gravestones, her flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The air grew colder with each step, her breath forming clouds that lingered unnaturally long. The whispers started then, faint at first but growing louder. They came from all directions, echoing through the fog. Liar. Betrayer. Thief. She tripped over an exposed root and fell hard, the diary slipping from her grasp. As she scrambled to retrieve it, she felt something cold brush against her ankle. She looked down and stifled a scream. A skeletal hand was clawing its way out of the ground, the earth splitting apart as more hands emerged around her. Clara bolted, adrenaline driving her forward. She didn't dare look back, even as the whispers turned to guttural moans and the sound of shuffling feet multiplied. She reached the cemetery's chapel, its weathered doors barely hanging on their hinges, and rushed inside. The air was oppressive, filled with the scent of mildew and rot. Ancient pews lay scattered, and the altar was covered in a thick layer of dust. She barricaded the door with a heavy pew, her chest heaving. The whispers were inside now, swirling around her like a malevolent wind. The diary in her hands began to grow warm, almost burning. She opened it again, desperate for answers. The final entry was written in a hurried scrawl. November 10th. To anyone who finds this, Leave while you can. The promises we break follow us to the grave. They're coming for me. They will come for you, too. There is no escape. The diary burst into flames, the pages curling to ash in seconds. Clara dropped it with a cry, and the room plunged into darkness. The whispers grew deafening, merging into a single, guttural roar. The barricade shook violently, the door splintering as shadowy figures pressed against it. The last thing Clara saw was a pair of glowing eyes staring at her from the darkness, accompanied by a voice that was not a whisper but a scream. Stay with us. The next morning, the cemetery was silent once more. Clara's car remained parked by the gates, its interior empty. Locals who passed by later swore they could hear faint whispers if they lingered too long, and the old shack was found burned to the ground, leaving behind nothing but ashes and a faint metallic scent in the air.